Hey everybody, it's Aaron here with Robert, and welcome to Get Your Geek On's review of the final episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
We made it 6
Somehow.
episodes through. This is the final episode of this season. There's been like Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen have said they want to come back. Actually, I saw Kathleen Kennedy, who's kind of head of Lucasfilm, had come out and said basically like, we don't have any plans for a season 2, but I'm not saying no. So who knows? We might get more, but as of right now, this could be the last appearance that we ever get of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I have a feeling, Darth Vader is going to continue to show up, and Hayden Christensen might reprise him, but we don't know. But we are going to go spoilers. We're going to talk about what happens in this episode, and ultimately, I want to start off by saying that this show always had an uphill battle, right? Not only is it a prequel, which prequels are always difficult, but this one has some really specific restraints around specific characters, around who can know what, when they can know it, what things have to look like. And so this show to me was always fighting an uphill battle as a major Star Wars nerd. Now, as someone who maybe isn't, a massive Star Wars fan that knows everything about everything, there might have been a little bit more leeway where you might go like, okay, like this character or this character, like, man, I know, Obi-Wan needs to survive, but, I'm not as, tied into everything he needs to be aware of or needs to know. But for me, this show, I think just there were so many elements to it that I'm really struggling with it because number one, I think the performances of all of the actors, Ewan McGregor in particular, but also the actress that played Leia, and I'm blanking on her name. But then you have, I thought Moses Ingram as the third sister did some interesting things. I thought the actress that played Tala was really good. We had several other supporting characters. I think Hayden Christensen did well with what he was supposed to do as Darth Vader. And so ultimately, I think the performances were all really, really good. I think that overall this series and this episode had some really, really good scenes, like things that I was like, man, that was really cool. I'm glad we got to see that. But ultimately, I'm left dissatisfied by this series because I feel like it either answered questions that I never had, or it like filled in gaps in ways that were kind of dissatisfying and ways that I went, yeah, I think there was a better choice to be made here if you were going to go this direction. And so it comes off feeling simultaneously unnecessary as a series, as well as unsatisfying in some of the answers that it did provide as a major Star Wars nerd. So we're going to get into the specifics of this episode, but that's kind of, I just wanted to give my overall series thoughts is that I wish I loved it. I know people that do. My sister is one. She's not a major Star Wars nerd. She's seen, all the movies, and she likes them, but, she's definitely not, steeped in all the lore and all those things like I am. And she had a great time. She loved the show. I know a lot of other people that are really enjoying it. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I wish that I could. But I am left feeling both like what was the point and also even what we got. I only loved some of it. I wish I loved more of it. What about you?
It was good still. I mean, I liked it, but again, I don't have the lore that you do. And like we were talking last night about it, some of it doesn't hit for me because it's just doesn't make storyline sense, or it just doesn't hit where other stuff does.
Yeah.
And again, I've said it several times and I'll always say it. I'm never a fan of prequels because characters have plot armor. Like you said already, we know pretty much all of our main characters can't get hurt because, well, we have to get Vader in the movies. We have to see Obi-Wan in episode 4. We have to see Leia all the way through the rest of the episode. So it's like, these characters can never truly be in danger. And like you said, if you write it well enough and you can act it well enough, yes, you can at least portray it. But let's face it, that's always a hard thing to do. There's very few things that do it right. Yeah. And unfortunately, they didn't do it right. Now,
yeah, I will say, like, telling a story where you know the outcome is not impossible. There's plenty of things to do. I mean, you know, when we went to go see, you know, Batman Begins, did anyone think Batman wasn't going to survive at the end? No, we all know Batman's going to make it, right? When you go see, you know, the Avengers, I mean, do we really think that Loki is going to end the movie on top, having defeated, like, so we know, like, yeah, maybe there's some, you know, a specific character here or there that might not make it out. You know, in a real life situation, the movie I brought up last night, we were talking about it, Apollo 13, I think is one of the best movies of all time. And I mean, unless you just don't know the history, which is certainly possible. But I have, you know, most people going to see that movie know that the 3 astronauts make it back home safely. Right. But there's so much tension in that movie in how they're going to accomplish it, what's happening on the ship, you know, and it's just told in such a way that even though you might know the final outcome, you're still very compelled as the story is progressing. So it's not to say that you can't do that. It is difficult. It's maybe more challenging than telling a story in, you know, where the ending is unknown. But yeah, I mean, you can do it. And I think in certain ways, the show did a successful job of that with a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Right. I'm not sure they did it as successfully with several of the other characters.
Exactly. And I agree. I think Obi-Wan's journey, if they would have cut everything else out and just show me Obi-Wan doing this, I would have been happy if this was a 3-episode thing. Like, hey, took Leia, saved her. Oh, they're still chasing us. Let me go confront them. Done. Easy peasy. Done. I will say this, you know, watching that final episode, I know you had made a comment last time we reviewed. You thought that may be the last time we see them together on screen, Vader and Obi-Wan. But we got the fight.
We did.
We got a huge fight. And first of all, I want to say Vader learned one thing: have the high ground. He took the ground out from underneath him.
Yeah, but he definitely didn't learn double tap. Nobody learns double tap.
We're going to go to the Sith, and we're going to say, we're going to give you one movie. You have to give us billions of dollars for this movie, but it'll teach you how to take care of every single Jedi problem ever. And then they'll all learn double tap. And then it's like, oh my God, we'll win the war now. And they will win. Because yeah, he should have went back in there and double tapped.
Just really make sure they're dead.
Yeah. I just dropped a clip on him. Drop a second clip on him. What? Double tap. Even, you know what? Just for fun, drop a third cliff.
Or you know, and I know we're going to get into the details of it, but specifically, we've shown throughout the series, whenever they're together, they can sense each other's presence.
Right.
So, like, did Vader just stop sensing his presence? Did he really think he was dead? Like, it didn't make any sense to me, because I'm like, you've shown that he can sense when Obi-Wan is around. Now Obi-Wan is really tapping into the Force. Like, he's full on using the Force, and you can't sense that. Yeah. And so it was just a very odd beat of him to, like, I'm gonna leave him here to die. Like, I don't know, you know, why that's become a thing. Like, why is that a thing now, where we're gonna leave people to die when we have so much evidence that they don't actually die when you leave them to die. So yeah.
I mean, there's 3 characters that did that now. So we got the third sister, we had the Grand Inquisitor, and then we have Kenobi. All 3 of them like, oh, we might be dead now.
And even like Obi-Wan defeats Vader and kind of leaves him, you know, leaves his suit a little bit in shambles. Like, he could have gone for a killing blow and chose not to. No. I don't know if it would have been successful. Like, you know, I'm not sure that he would have been able to overcome him. Maybe Vader would have called down reinforcements. I don't know. And that's the thing that I wish we had seen some sort of signal from Vader that, you know, like, hey, reinforcements are coming. And that's why Kenobi has to get out of there. Is like, if he wants to escape, he's got to go right now. He can't prolong this fight anymore. Like, that's one of those things I wish there had been, that kind of motivation for Kenobi, because ultimately I don't know why the fight ends, other than Kenobi is just now fully accepting that Anakin is gone, which I think is important for his arc and where we see him in the future movies, because when we get to episode 4, you know, and he talks about you know, confronting Vader for the last time and all that stuff, and then into 5 and 6, when Luke finds out you know, that Vader is his father, his conversation in episode 6 with Ghost Kenobi, you know, is really poignant, because Kenobi saying there is no Anakin anymore. I didn't, you know, when he says that line, which has been mocked incessantly, you know, because Luke is like, you lied to me. You told me that my father was dead. And he said, well, he was. Like, from a certain point of view, I'm telling the truth, because Anakin no longer existed. It's just Vader. And you have Luke saying, no, there's good in him. I can pull it out of him. And Kenobi is like, no, you can't. He's done. He's dead. So like, this was an important realization for him to get to somewhere in this time period, that Anakin is truly dead. There is no coming back. He is Darth Vader now. The way he calls him Darth, it was actually a good callback to what he calls him in A New Hope, when he calls him, you know, he says, you know, when I left you, I was but the learner, now I'm the master. And Kenobi has that great comeback. He's like, oh, only a master of evil, Darth. And it's like, you know, so there were nice parallels. There was a lot. Again, I think the journey of Kenobi, of discovering and accepting that his friend Anakin is well and truly dead, that, you know, he no longer exists, as well as kind of having that re-inspiration of hope through his interactions with Leia, through his interactions with, you know, the people of the path from Tala and others, that he is going to hope again. It's been 10 years of him just beating himself up, you know, feeling like there's no hope in the galaxy. That, you know, he talks with Owen at one point in the series that he's going to you know, have to train Luke as he gets older, but you could tell like his heart's really not in it. Like he's, oh, I have to do this, but I don't really want to. And there's not really any hope for it. And I think by the end of the series, you see that he is in a more hopeful place. He's going to go move into his little hut instead of, you know, hanging out in a cave all the time. You know, and so I liked the journey that Kenobi got there, especially in the broad strokes. In the specifics, there were some issues, but
I mean, and this is, I want to kind of dissect a little bit of it too. Like, one, I will say I liked the way the fight looked between him and Vader. It was cool. But like you said, as you get towards the end where Vader throws all these mountains on him, essentially these rocks, why don't you sense that? And then even in that same instance, when he's walking away, it's like, oh wait, he's alive? Like, you didn't sense him 30 steps behind you still? Like, he was about to sneak attack you. I do,
which also I had an issue with, because in episode 5 in the flashback scene, Kenobi's telling him like a Jedi only uses their powers to defend, never to attack. I'm sorry, Obi-Wan, but attacking a dude as he's walking away doesn't qualify as defending. I'm just gonna say it. Obi-Wan, you've always been a master of contradictions. Even in episode 3, one of my favorite moments ever, like that I just laugh at because it's so dumb, is, you know, as they're building up to their fight, you know, Anakin is like, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. And he's only a Sith deals in absolutes. Really? Only a Sith? Which is in itself an absolute there, Kenobi. So I'm just saying.
But he's Kenobi, so he gets away with that.
Yeah, like, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
And, you know, and I was okay with that. But again, there's problems with the fight. That was one of my problems.
Yeah.
I did like that we got to see almost, I guess, peak Obi-Wan, where he's beating the crud out of it. He breaks the little like respirator. You see the sparks fly. Sparks fly. He picks up all the rocks and he's just chunking at him, slices the mask, and then we see Vader under that mask, you know. I will say, for me, I guess being in film a little bit and listening to audios and stuff, I loved what they did. The transition. Sometimes you hear Vader talk and then you hear Anakin talk, and then at times where it was blending. And if you listen carefully, you hear both voices talking.
Yeah, and the voice modulator being like damaged, where we got, you know, some Hayden Christensen, some James Earl Jones, and then times where we were getting both at the same time. Yeah, I thought that was done really, really well.
It was, because to me that helps, like, again, telling the story wise, that helps solidify that maybe there is a little bit of Anakin left in there somewhere for like the comments later in episode 6 and all that there is good in him, but that evil presence of Vader's voice always is there and taking over at times as they're talking. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I love that little subtle, like, hey, we're placing this here. And they did good for that part. But then we go to, I want to go to this part, the end, where he senses Luke's in danger because the third sister's over there and she's going to go kill him now. And we have Owen and what's his wife's name? Beru. And they're like, we're going to defend him with blasters, even though we probably know that they could block this pretty easily. That whole scene for me, honestly, was garbage. Yeah. I hated all of that.
Yeah, I think that the storytelling really fell apart for the third sister. I think there's broad strokes that are interesting when you say like, right. Okay, we have this former youngling who witnessed this massacre in Order 66 and has been driven by her anger and revenge for, since that moment where she wants to, everything that the Jedi are, like the Jedi failed. And so she hates the Jedi because they failed her. She hates Anakin for being the one that actually killed her friends and all that. I think that's a really compelling backstory. Yeah. And so now she's basically infiltrated now the Empire in order to exact revenge on Vader. And so I think there's broad strokes there, but I really I completely agree. I think it needed to end in the last episode. They needed to kill her in that moment because having her go to Tatooine and attack the Lars homestead. Number one, we talked about stakes earlier. That was one of the things we talked about, like the prequels and everything. And there's no stakes here. There's not like, and so like having, and it also, it's a problem with storytelling where there's no personal connection. Like they tried to kind of like, I know she had that confrontation with Owen in the first episode, but there's no like callback to it in this one. They don't go like, you're the guy who stood up to me, and that, like they don't mention that. And so you don't really feel that there's any sort of personal connection there. Like the personal connection was with Vader, was with the Grand Inquisitor, was with like, she had been butting heads with the Grand Inquisitor throughout the first 2 episodes. She'd been butting heads with Vader. Like he force choked her at the one point. We know she has this history of revenge. So like that was where her story needed to end, and having it go to Tatooine, number one, again, like there was no sense of danger for any of our characters because we know they're all going to survive. The only one that's possibly in danger is Reva, but she also feels like she's overpowered for the situation. So I don't really feel like she's going to die. And so there's no stakes. And on top of that, this was the moment where it really felt like they were really constrained, because in episode 4, Luke knows nothing about lightsabers. He knows nothing about the Force. He knows nothing. So he can't witness her using her lightsaber. He can't see her use the Force. He can't, like, all these things. And so it just like, every time like she's coming into a room with her lightsaber, Luke's got to be leaving that room. Like it just was really weird because of the way it runs.
The red glowing light below me as I'm leaving this room. There was no red light there.
Yeah, and her turn ultimately to not make the same choice as Anakin, to say I'm not going to do that. Like I think that was fine, but I think that it lacked weight because of, like, she's sharing that moment with Kenobi, who, yes, he has the connection with Anakin, and so he can kind of say things to her in a way, but it just, I don't know, it was very unsatisfying. I wish they'd killed her off at the end of episode 5. I didn't like the way they used her in this episode at all. And I'm also not really looking forward to seeing her in other things. Like, she makes it out of the end of this series, which makes me think, okay, we're going to have this character of Reva show up somewhere else. Maybe she's now going to help the people of the path, as we move forward or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know that I'm interested in that story anymore. Like, I don't know.
I'm right there with you. I'm not interested in it. I'm not looking forward to see where it could go with her. I mean, we're obviously Obi-Wan's not even training her. She's just going to be on her own, it seems like. So it would have been one thing if it's like, I'll take you on as like my Padawan essentially, or we'll just roam together and we'll go do missions or have adventures. But it's literally just like Obi-Wan's like, peace, you got this. You're a good person, really. And I'm glad you made the right choice, brother. But I'm gonna bounce that way. All right. I gotta go look for my master, which lead into it. We do get a small appearance of Qui-Gon Jinn again. I did like
Liam
that.
Neeson. Liam
I
Neeson
love
returning.
seeing him.
Yeah, I think that was it felt, as a major Star Wars fan, it felt a little bit like a checkbox moment. Like, oh, in episode 3, Yoda tells, Obi-Wan that he's been communing with Qui-Gon's Force ghost, and he can teach, Obi-Wan how to become one with the Force. So go, while you're on Tatooine, go meditate on this and learn it. And so it felt like, hey, we've got to get Obi-Wan to that point, because in episode 4, he's got to become one with the Force. And so it did feel a little bit like a checkbox moment, but I still enjoyed it. It's Liam Neeson. Yeah. I thought it worked for the story. It was a good, like, final ending moment.
Exactly. Now, and the other moment, of course, we kind of see Vader sitting in I guess his throne, talking to the Emperor. And I did like that. That was kind of the nail in the coffin for Anakin, I feel like, for now. Oh, so you still have feelings for your master kind of thing. Like, oh, that sounds like, Anakin's still kind of there. And Vader's like, nah, you're my master. Like, we're good. So I like that he's trying to hide that he's done with Kenobi.
Yeah, I think that this scene is ultimately the hardest one to overcome if you're going to do a season 2 and bring back Hayden Christensen, because I mean, it is kind of very explicit. And this is one of those things where I said, like, questions that I got answered that I didn't need answered, or that had unsatisfying conclusions. This is the one that really stands out to me. This one and the one between Obi-Wan and Leia, which we'll get to in a minute, is that this just kind of feels unsatisfying to say that he's going to give up his hunt for Kenobi just because, the Emperor kind of calls him out on it and is like, you're too emotional about this. Because being emotional is kind of a Sith thing. Like, they rely on their emotions for a lot of their things. And so it just feels kind of out of place to say, like, don't hunt Kenobi anymore because you're allowing your emotions to cloud your judgment. Well, that's kind of a Sith thing. And so I don't know. It wasn't ultimately satisfying to me that this is why, for the next 9 years, or depending on if they have another season, they don't have another encounter after this, that he stops hunting for Kenobi. I'm just not sure how much I like it as a conclusion.
It would have been better. I'm going to talk about prior scene before this, where it's actually towards the beginning of the episode. I don't know what you call their ship, but the Empire's big battleship that he's on is shooting at the little rebel ship that's flying away. And we see the escape pod, and, we have the Grand Inquisitor standing next to Vader, and he's like, we need to pursue this. And Vader's like, no, Kenobi. But sir, like, we could kill all the rebellion right here. And he's like, nah, Kenobi. So if we would have seen maybe the Grand Inquisitor walk in and be like, no, his emotions are, costing us thing, maybe it would have sold better, because then the Emperor can be like, oh, you let all these guys get away? Like, nah, you're putting this to bed because you should have taken out the rebellion first. And that way, know your place kind of thing. That would have made a little more sense if the Grand Inquisitor was in the room with him. Or even if Emperor even would have said, the Grand Inquisitor told me that you have done this, and well, we need to take out, like, kind of like just steer Vader, like, you need to go over here. That would have made a little more sense, at least.
Yeah, there was a way to say, like, I'm aware that you went after Kenobi instead of taking the big picture view, and that's unacceptable. Like, there's a way to put that in there, because I agree that would have sat a little better. I still would have been like, I think Vader is still going to be obsessed with Kenobi. Like, I don't see a reason why, and especially he spent 10 years, without being able to find him. Now, we have this version where, like, he comes in contact with him, like, he has 2 major fights with him, and another time where he just escapes on this ship just before he gets there. And again, he's aware of the fact that Leia was effective in drawing out Kenobi. And I just feel like after 10 years of not being able to find his master and harboring this hatred and this anger and all those things, it just wasn't strong enough to convince me that he would leave it be.
Right.
And maybe that's where season 2 goes, is Vader is not going to listen to the Emperor. I don't know. But it's just, it felt like that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to put the nail in it and say he's not going to pursue Kenobi anymore. And that, to me, just ultimately wasn't strong enough. It wasn't a strong enough justification for this. Like, again, you don't get the epic fights if you do it this way. But I think what could and should have been the case is that Reva was a rogue inquisitor, right? We've talked about this before.
Right.
That she's pursuing Kenobi. She's using Leia and pursuing Kenobi. And that Vader doesn't really get involved until the very final episode, when he discovers her failure to actually bring Kenobi. Like, maybe she says, I have Kenobi, you know, come at once. I've found Kenobi. And then by the time he shows up, Kenobi's escaped, and now he's just super angry at Reva, but he doesn't have any leads. He doesn't know where Kenobi might have gone to. And I think that would have been a much more satisfying way for this to go, is like, he's aware that Kenobi slipped through his fingers again, but he doesn't have any way to pursue him. Whereas the way this rolled out, we know he could come and kidnap Leia again, and that would probably be effective in drawing out Kenobi. And it's just a weird scenario that I feel like the show never overcame for me.
Right. I mean, I guess I can let it slide because, again, she's still the senator's daughter. So how could he really go in there without setting off too many bells and whistles? You could argue that. But again, we get the end. I mean, I guess I would have also liked to see this at the end. So we see Kenobi visiting Leia as she's dressed up now, wearing the holster now he's given her, and we get the conversation with everybody. I think I would have liked maybe more guards around. Like, now he's more protective of Leia. Like, yeah, you can take care of yourself, but maybe now there's like 4 or 5 armed guards always around her. Yes, you would say, oh, well, Vader could kill them, but the point being is that she's more protected now. Right. I would have been okay with something like that. Or maybe as they leave the room, you see guards at every like stop or something. You know, that would have made more sense, because then again, you could say, well, Vader was going to try to be sneaky, but now she's heavily guarded. But I don't know if that scene sold for me 100%. I get what they were trying to go with, but I didn't bite on it. I was just like, this is okay.
And this is another one where, like, episode 4, there's just zero indication, not only from the hologram message, in the hologram message, that there's a relationship there, which you could say, well, if this message falls into the wrong hands, we don't want anyone to know that there's this connection to us. Oh, right. Okay. I don't know about that, but okay. But then, I mean, like, he dies, and Luke, who's known him for like 2 days, is completely broken up about it, and Leia doesn't give a crap. Now, I know Leia's like, I'm focused on the mission. I'm focused on what we got to do. Like, you casualties in war. Like, she's way more mature than farm boy Luke. I get it. But you're gonna tell me that she just didn't care? Like, they all see it happen, and Luke is the one that's like screaming no, and Leia's like, get on the ship now. Like, there's just no reaction from her when Kenobi dies. And so that's, again, it's just one of those things where you go, like, I know that this was like you have to pretend like we don't have this connection, but it just feels unsatisfying to a major Star Wars fan like me that's like parsing all of these things. And I'm just like, what I really wish they had done is, like, the opening, couple of episodes, I think, could have stayed mostly the same. Like, he rescues her sometime in episode 2, they get off planet, and he gets her back to her parents with the Empire on his tail. And so then, like, if you want to tell a full story, but I think she needed to be back with her family very quickly and not have this full, like, we're connecting and talking about your mom and your dad and my family, and we're having this, like, it just feels like their relationship deepened so much over episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 that it really flies in the face of what happens later on in episode 4, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think, again, knowing enough on episode 4, it's one of those ones like, why doesn't she have that connection? Why does now the message doesn't make sense from R2? Like, it doesn't, none of it's tying up perfectly for her. And it's almost one of those ones I kind of almost wish it was Luke that got kidnapped, because then that would be maybe he falls and hits his head like he still fell, and he just doesn't remember anything. Like, I almost could live with that, because I'm like, oh, he just doesn't remember.
I mean, I think I would have hated I don't remember anything about our adventure. I think I would have hated that too.
But at least it's believable, because it's like, well, that way explains the scene, or maybe he gets his memory back later. I don't know.
Yeah,
you had an uphill battle with them too, no matter how long you played it. Anything more than the first 2-3 episodes with Leia, you're now playing with fire, because you don't know where you're going to go with it. Because like you said, it would have been better to get rid of her after episode 3. Okay, rescued her, put her on the ship with the Eternal's God, and she'll be fine. He's with the God.
Yeah, and it really was like that was my biggest problem, because I remember the first 2 episodes came out together and we reviewed them, and I was like, I like this, I like what they're doing, I like this, like the fact that Kenobi is been drawn out of hiding using Leia, like this is really interesting. And I think I even said like, oh, and early in episode 3 he's going to get her back to her family. And then like that's where I expected the story to go, and I'm trying not to judge the show on what I wanted it to be and more judge it on its actual merits. But I do think that was a mistake. I think that the storyline with Reva did not end where it should have. I think that was the natural conclusion for her personal story would have been to end it at the hands of Vader and the Grand Inquisitor. That's just where it needed to end. I think the Kenobi story and his journey was really good. And the show is called Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's about Kenobi. Exactly. It's about his journey. I think they did that part well. I think all of the other characters just had moments that didn't fit well for me, whether it be Vader kind of accepting that he's not going to keep on hunting Kenobi, or Reva, surviving her encounter with Vader and the Grand Inquisitor, or Leia getting back to this planet, but then, just kind of having, even though everything has changed for her, and now it doesn't line up with things that happened in episode 4, to, the Luke, I'm running for my life, but, like, I don't know. It's just like, there were so many other like fill in the blank things that just didn't end up working for me. And that's why the show as a whole, just the story didn't pull me in and really convince me that this was something that needed to be told. Again, the performances are really good. There's individual scenes that I really like, characters that I really like. I think Tala was a great addition. I think, a lot of the fight scenes were really cool and inventive in the way they use the Force. And I liked a lot of individual aspects of the show. I think that, it's one of those things where you had all the ingredients, and I don't know if it was the recipe book or the chef or a combination of the two, but you just didn't make the right dinner. It was like all the ingredients were there. Yeah. And it came out tasting a little bit odd. There's a little bit too much salt. It's maybe a little bit undercooked, whatever, however, wherever you want to take this metaphor. I just feel like it didn't land for me. And I wish that it had, but I'm also, starting to sense a trend with Disney Star Wars that, I think Boba Fett was really not good. I think this is having some of the same issues that Boba Fett did. Yes. And that's making me worried for what was my most anticipated show in Andor, which is another like prequel story, although with much lesser known characters. So we don't have all the same restrictions that we did in a show like this, but it's making me worried that I'm not sure how they're going to tell that compelling narrative.
We just need to go back to Mando. Let's just stay with him, because you can tell so many different things and never like worry about a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, even with Mando, there's definitely issues that I have. I feel like I don't love Mando the same way most people do. I like it. I don't love it.
Yeah, exactly. I know you don't, but I still love Mando. You know what? I just love Baby Yoda. That's what his name is.
I'm gonna say this right now. I think one of the only properties of Star Wars that we haven't reviewed in the last few years is when the Clone Wars released season 7, and they did like 12 episodes. And to me, Star Wars came under the Disney umbrella right before, episode 7, 8, and 9, the sequel trilogy. We've gotten, Star Wars Rebels in that timeline. We've gotten The Bad Batch. We've gotten Mandalorian. We've gotten Rogue One and Han Solo. We've gotten now Boba Fett and Kenobi. So there's been a lot of series and movies and things that have come out.
Right.
And for my money, the only thing that has truly been great, not good, because there's been a lot of good, there's been a lot of adequate, and there's been some bad. But I think the only truly great Star Wars content we've gotten out of Disney is the final 4 episodes of that season 7 of the Clone Wars, the, kind of Order 66 final confrontation on Mandalore with Ahsoka and Darth Maul.
Oh yeah, I've seen
clones,
clips of that stuff. That's
that
beautiful.
4 episode arc is truly great. It's incredible. And other than that, I don't think they've reached the highs of greatness in Star Wars since Disney has acquired it. And I'm not sure that they have. I think Disney has raised the bar. There's been nothing truly as bad as Attack of the Clones.
Right.
And I think that they've brought up the floor, if you will, on how bad Star Wars can be. But I think they've kind of lowered the ceiling as well. And they're not reaching the same highs that I think they could.
Possibly. I do want to say before we end this, because we're kind of wrapping it up, O'Shea.
We are. This has been long.
O'Shea Jackson, we didn't even talk about him, which is Ice Cube's son.
Yeah.
I want to say amazing that he started off as a production assistant on Star Wars and now is a main character, or co-starred in the episodes with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I think that's really cool. It just shows that he, you strive for something, you get it. And I actually liked his character. I do hope they do more with him. Like I would be okay seeing more with him.
Yeah, and I think it's quite possible he could show up in a show like Andor, which takes place, about 3-4 years after the events of this movie. And I think it's entirely possible that he could show up and be part of the rebellion. That Andor's building. So yeah,
I would love to see him. I just had to give that shout out to him because I thought it's so cool. You start off as basically the bottom of it, and now you're making your way up there, and he'll get up there like his dad did. I mean,
son of a major star. Just from rags to riches. This guy, I'm telling.
Hey, but you know what? It's not like his dad put him straight in there.
I know he put in the work. I'm not trying to take.
I got your back, man. As Ice Cube calls us, what'd you say about my son? I'm sorry, it wasn't me. It wasn't him. It was him. So on that note, guys, we'll wrap this up. But definitely check out all of the videos we have on YouTube at Official GYGO, Facebook, and TikTok, all at Official GYGO. And check out all of our podcasts. But on that note, I'm Aaron. That's Robert. This is Get Your Geek On, and stay geeking. Get your geek on.
Bye.